Hi, have you ever realized that gluten could be a problem? Have you ever wondered if you might have a problem with gluten? So, we're going to look at this and ask the question, how real a problem is gluten? Are gluten-free diets really a fad, or is this something we should all be looking at? First, I'd like to compare celiac disease with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. These are the two basic ways that a person can be immune reactive to wheat gluten. Now, celiac disease is a specific autoimmune condition where eating gluten triggers an immune reaction and your immune system will damage the lining of your small intestine. This is what most physicians think about when they think about if wheat gluten is a problem. Celiac disease is not that common. 1 in 100 people are estimated to have it, but many people react to gluten but do not have celiac disease. That is called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. It's also triggered by wheat or gluten consumption. It's also an immune response. And for some people, the symptoms are almost the same, but you can't diagnose it the same way. Celiac disease is diagnosed with endoscopy. So they put a scope down your throat and look at the small intestine and look for immune reaction by taking a tissue biopsy and looking at it under a microscope after exposing you to gluten for several weeks. Now, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, even though it's not celiac, can still ruin your health. But here's something you need to know. Most doctors, in my experience, seem to overlook, deny, or just don't even really believe that non-celiac gluten sensitivity is a thing, is possible. Many doctors, it's either celiac disease or you're not reactive to wheat. There's an amazing amount of skepticism on this, even though, as you're going to see shortly, there is very valid lab work that identifies it quite specifically. So today, you're going to learn the truth about it. First, who am I? My name is Dr. Richard Matthews. I'm a board-certified chiropractic neurologist and functional neurologist. I've been a practitioner. I've been a doctor of chiropractic since 1990. Got my undergraduate degree in biology before that. So I've been in practice, 32 years as of this year. I've worked with medical physicians. My professional journey evolved from just chiropractic, spinal manipulation, to adding a lot of other functional health practices over the course of my career. Lab work, nutritional work, that type of thing, as well as chiropractic neurology. I'm also an avid cyclist and kind of a fitness nut. That's about me. Now, my non-celiac gluten sensitivity story is that years ago, I began to develop painful itchy rashes. This is an example, although it's a bit more recent. And I developed joint pain and brain fog and bloating and became really, really uncomfortable. I did regular lab work and it didn't show anything wrong. I did a food sensitivity test. It showed I was not sensitive to wheat, according to that test. And that was an ELISA ACT test, if any of you know that lab. I did a gluten test, which was a Cyrex Labs test, which said I was not sensitive to gluten. But I still felt better every time I avoided wheat. Years later, I discovered a better test called Wheat Zoomer. And we're going to explain that today. It's very sensitive to everything gluten breaks down into. Gliadins, glutenins, non-gluten wheat proteins. I stayed eating a gluten-free diet, but with gluten-free substitution foods and still experienced occasional flare-ups. This picture is an example of that. Being completely, totally gluten-free has made me completely better. Now, what are the components of wheat and what is gluten? Gluten breaks down, or wheat rather, breaks down into gluten, which is a protein, and albumin and globulin, which are other proteins. Gluten breaks down into gliadins and glutenins, And each of those breaks down further. Now, this, if you react to wheat, that's one thing. If you react to gluten, that's one thing. Or you can react to these, or you can react to all the byproducts. In my case, I did not react to any of this except for all the byproducts, where you're going to see in a minute I reacted to most of them. So how would you know if you might have non-celiac gluten sensitivity? Well, some of the most common symptoms in my experience, my own and my patients, and people I've known that aren't patients: joint pain, skin rashes, symptoms of autoimmune conditions, which can be almost anything, low vitamin D status, multiple food sensitivities. You get sensitive to other foods because it causes gut inflammation. Neurologic symptoms are possible: memory loss, balance and equilibrium, vertigo problems, numbness, tingling, anxiety are extremely common with gluten reactions. Headaches are very common. Diarrhea or constipation, or alternating from one to the other, otherwise known as irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS-D or IBS-C. It's still irritable bowel syndrome. Discomfort and bloating after eating is very common. Fatigue after eating is very common. Now, even just one of these symptoms could mean that there's a problem, but it doesn't mean for sure there's a problem, because obviously many other things can cause headaches or constipation, for example. Most doctors' approach to non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and apologies if you're one of these doctors or if you're one of the enlightened medical physicians who practices functional medicine and probably knows a lot more about this than I do. I'm really just touching on the surface here. In my own experience with myself and my patients is that the majority of medical physicians want to do 6 weeks of a high gluten diet followed by an endoscopy biopsy to rule out celiac disease. The official guidelines are really to also do 6 weeks of gluten-free diet to see if somebody gets better, but intermittently include gluten without the patient knowing, to test for what's known as the nocebo effect, kind of the corollary to the placebo effect, and then to go back to 6 weeks of high gluten diet to determine if your symptoms come back, which, if you look at that, you can tell the medical profession in general is very skeptical of non-celiac gluten sensitivity, despite validated testing that shortcuts right to an answer. This is not intended as a knock on the entire medical profession, but it's just to point out that if you've mentioned gluten sensitivity to your doctor and he ran a simple test and said, no, you don't have celiac disease, or just asked a couple of questions and said, no, you don't have celiac disease, and doesn't want to talk about it after that, this is why. So what if there's an easier way to get to an answer? Wheat Zoomer is, in my opinion, the best way. It's the best test. Using 5 drops of blood, literally, this test looks at intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut, transglutaminase reactivity, anti-gliadin antibodies, and antibodies to non-gluten wheat proteins, and a number of other things. So we're going to briefly change gear here, and I'm going to show you an actual test. So this is one of my Wheat Zoomer tests on me. This is me. So in the beginning of the test, there's a summary that shows what was tested and what was reactive. These are strong reactions. These are moderate reactions. These are things that did not react. Now, it goes through each detail. So, for example, this test also covers wheat allergens. Are you actually allergic to wheat? And allergy is not the same as sensitivity. The IgE here means immunoglobulin E. This is a part of your immune system that if it reacts, it makes you maybe break out in hives, maybe your lips swell up, that kind of reaction, which is completely different. If you looked at your immune system like a military force, you might have Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, National Guard, etc. And they're all part of military, but they all work together, yet they all do slightly different jobs. Your immune system's really exactly the same thing. IgE is one of those. IgG, IgM, IgA. You could think of it the same way, and they all do slightly different things. Then we look at celiac disease itself, which these are celiac disease markers. Yes, you can get an answer without doing a biopsy. TTG, transglutaminase complex, intestinal permeability, which is leaky gut, if you know about leaky gut. Now, here in this section, I'll point out this rightmost column is previous. This was in March of 2018, and the current one is was December of 2020. So you'll notice I had pretty strong leaky gut. I had antibodies to zonulin and actin back in 2018, and almost all of it gone by 2020. Transglutaminase is an interesting thing. It's part of wheat sensitivity or gluten sensitivity. Transglutaminase is used in the meat industry as meat glue. So when you go to the deli and you buy sliced turkey breast or roast beef, and they have a great big hunk of meat they can put on the meat slicer, that's meat fibers that are glued together. There's no piece of meat in the animal that's that big. And it's glued together with transglutaminase. So if you have antibodies to transglutaminase, as I did in 2018, you can actually have a gluten reaction to gluten-free cold cuts, because even gluten-free cold cuts can have transglutaminase. And in fact, they have to, because the meat has to get glued together somehow. Little meat trivia for you there. So then we look at immunoglobulin G and A, antibody responses to wheat germ agglutinins, wheat germ being more of the fiber in wheat. And you can see I had very strong responses to that. Gliadins or gliadins are the peptides that gluten breaks down into. Again, very, very strong antibody response in 2018. I want to take this moment to point out to you that in 2018, I was on a gluten-free diet and had been for probably over 10 years at that point. And that's significant because that gluten-free diet included a lot of gluten-free substitution foods, gluten-free bagels, gluten-free bread, gluten-free pancake mix. And you can see from the results, let me go back to it, that it didn't really work out that way. So that's really, really significant to consider. It means my gluten-free diet was not as gluten-free as I thought it was, really, is what that comes down to. Some of these antibody responses take a long time to get rid of, but you can see most of them are gone. Then glutenins are the other proteins that gluten breaks down into. And then we have non-gluten wheat proteins. These are other proteins that are not gluten. So, yeah, I reacted to all of those. And in 2020, did not react to any of them. So there you go. The difference here in diet is really, really significant because this is my gluten-free diet in 2018 with gluten-free bread and gluten-free every kind of substitution food. And in 2020, this is meat and vegetable. There's no grain at all. It's absolutely gluten-free. It's actually almost exclusively carnivore diet at that point. And that is what a gluten sensitivity test looks like when it's done right. Now, let's go on and look at, does gluten sensitivity affect your gut bacteria? Short answer, yes, but vice versa, meaning that if your gut bacteria are very imbalanced, that can cause problems with gluten sensitivity. So it can work either way. If you stay with either imbalanced gut bacteria long enough, you'll develop gluten sensitivity if you're eating gluten. Or if you're gluten sensitive long enough and keep eating gluten, you'll mess up your gut bacteria eventually. Anything that makes your gut inflamed will cause imbalances in gut bacteria. That's just how it is. You could also be suffering from SIBO, small intestine bacteria overgrowth, particularly if you get bloating after you eat. You can have that as a separate condition and not be gluten sensitive, although most of the people I've seen with SIBO actually are also gluten sensitive. So you can definitely have both problems. Gut bacteria imbalances affect your immune function. That makes food reactions and gluten sensitivity worse. So what if we could identify gut bacteria and see how to help those? So let's take a look at that. There is a test called Gut Zoomer, and Gut Zoomer is a test that looks at a lot of different markers of poor digestion, as well as looking at a lot of your gut microbiome microbes. So here's a list of all the markers that are tested. These are all functional markers of digestion, seeing if are you actually digesting your food? Do you need supplementary stomach acid and enzymes or not? Then we get to the list of actual bacteria, microbes. And yeah, that's a pretty good list. In addition, there are pathogens that are tested for. So now I'm going to show you a sample report. And again, it starts out with a summary, and then it goes into looking at markers of inflammation, digestive insufficiency. Are you digesting meat fiber, plant fiber? Are you digesting fats? Are you absorbing cholesterol? Bile acid metabolites, how well are your gut bacteria helping you here? And some other markers, including fecal occult blood, which shows up if you have a stomach ulcer, for example, or other problems that are making you bleed internally. And zonulin and okay. Then we look at the actual bacteria, and this shows the potential associated risk of other problems. So if you have these imbalances, it raises the chances of having these problems on the right that are in red. If it's in green, then it's okay. If it's in red, you're at an increased risk of it with the imbalances that are in red. So this is a great report because it actually highlights which supplements might help, which supplements are recommended. This example, actually, this person is at increased risk of celiac disease. Coincidence. I didn't make up this sample report. Diabetes, metabolic health markers, lower production of vitamins because your gut bacteria, on a good day, if they're healthy, help produce vitamins that your body uses. Neurologic health. There are a lot of these. I'm not going to go through every single one, but if you do this test and you book a visit with me to review your results, we actually do go through every single one and all the recommendations. Then this is a list of pathogens. Pathogens are organisms that cause disease, the real baddies. So we can look at this and see in this example, there are a couple of pathogens present. Then there are protozoans. Those are single-celled parasites. And helminths. Helminths are worms. For example, Taenia solium, that's a pork worm that shows up if you've eaten undercooked pork. And it's a really ugly looking worm in a microscope. Viruses, these are viruses that cause gut infections. Fungi, pathogenic fungi, including Candida albicans, which you may have heard of, and antibiotic resistant genes. Then there's another summary at the end. So you can see that test covers quite a bit. Now, what does all this cost? This is on my website that I'm going to show you later, if you ordered this package, which is I'm offering here through this webinar, the gut zoomer test is $1,040. The wheat zoomer test is $519. The Zoom session to review results, which is about an hour-long session, just face-to-face over Zoom, so that I can screen share just like I did during this webinar, and a follow-up Zoom session. After we've made recommendations, I like to do at least one follow-up and see how that's going and have the chance to answer any questions. Now, that adds up to $1,759. I'm giving you a discount code at the end of this program that will save you $263.94. Now, you might be thinking that's expensive, but really, compared to what? If it gives you a simple way to get an answer about what is going on with your gut, what is that worth? I can tell you this is a lot less expensive than many of the other things you might go through. And I know this because a lot of the patients that I see are people who have been everywhere, tried everything, and haven't given up yet. And they often tell me how much they've spent on other tests or other interventions that did not accurately target the problem. This is important because non-celiac gluten sensitivity can cause nerve inflammation, interfere with brain function, increase chances of dementia. There's the research study if you want to look it up. Imbalanced gut bacteria can basically wreck your entire health picture from mental health to physical health. It can cause ataxia, which is a cerebellar condition, and gluten sensitivity can cause memory disorders, even Alzheimer's. I've even seen it cause, or at least we're pretty sure that it caused multiple sclerosis, and there are a lot of people that believe that's what caused their multiple sclerosis. You might be thinking your friends would get offended. Stay offended, my friends. You might be thinking your friends would get offended if you don't eat what they eat, or they wouldn't understand if you have to be on a gluten-free diet. I've been doing this for years, and if you're a friend of mine, you know this is true, that there are just certain things I eat, certain things I do not eat, and I really don't compromise on that. And if you're my friend, you learn to feed me things that I can eat, or understand if I won't eat what you made, if it's something I'm not supposed to eat. So any real friend will support you in your health journey, even if they disagree with it. Many of those friends should probably do a test also, unless they're in absolutely perfect health and have no symptoms at all, because I can tell you if people have symptoms that are food related, most of them are actually gluten sensitive. I've been doing this test for years now, and I've only seen like one person that was not gluten sensitive and had symptoms. Gluten-free choices are more common than ever. Very commonly, my wife and I can go out with friends or with our kids, and we can find things to eat because there are more and more gluten-free options on menus. Health is more important than really almost anything else. It's important to hold the line and stick to your plan. This is particularly important with gluten because it's not something where you can say, and patients tell me this all the time, well, I don't know if it's working. Are you sticking to the diet? Well, mostly. Okay, what does mostly mean? Well, I only eat something. I ate part of a hot dog bun yesterday, but I only do that every few days. Well, it takes like a month for your immune system to recover from being exposed to gluten. So if you cheat or accidentally get exposed once a week, you won't see most of the benefits of the diet. Then there's the people that try to rationalize feeling terrible. Wait till you get my age, or getting old isn't for sissies. I always like that Mark Twain quote, "Do not complain about growing old. It is a privilege denied to many." So when I sort of, and I joke, I came out as gluten-free, a lot of friends, a lot of patients my age and older seem to really want to talk me out of it, with a lot of people saying, oh, just wait till you get to be my age. A lot of times I was already older than they were. I've always explained that, aging is inevitable. Look at the alternative, right? But we have a lot of control over how it affects us. It's much, much better to remain healthy, remain active, be able to exercise, be able to work hard and play hard no matter how old you are until it's your time to go. And some people are able to do it that way, so they prove that it's possible. Being gluten sensitive and not following a gluten-free diet really, really speeds up the aging process. And imbalanced gut bacteria do that as well. So those are really things that are important. This might sound complicated to do or put into action, but it's really only 3 major steps. You register on my website and choose Wheat Zoomer and Gut Zoomer, add them to the shopping cart, add the review and follow-up visits. Don't forget to use the discount code at checkout. When your test kit arrives, follow the directions, prick your finger, follow the directions for the stool sample, mail it in. It comes with a mailer. You just send it to the lab. Within 2 weeks, you'll have results. Actually, the gut bacteria test, the Gut Zoomer, is about a month and not 2 weeks, but the Wheat Zoomer is, I think, just about always under 2 weeks. And then you can schedule your Zoom visit with me so that you can review your results and make a plan. So this is how you can do it. You can use your phone, just pause this video, use your phone, read the QR code, and it'll take you right to this website. Or if you're on a phone or a computer, you can probably just click right on this link and go to my website. Then when you're there, register a user ID, order your test, review, and follow-up visits, follow the instructions when you get your kit. Schedule a review. There's my email. You can email me to do the scheduling. You'll have to do that because you won't be able to schedule from this website, so just take my word for it. And you can just email me. I'm on the computer every day. I'll answer your email and find a time that we can meet. And here, last of all, is the all-important gift code. Supporter 15 is your discount code. It will save you 15%, not the 10% that it says down here. That's a boo-boo. It's a 15% discount code. So I hope to see you on there, and I look forward to helping you. I hope you found this webinar useful. So good luck and best of health to you.